going to share a terrifying experience that happened to me and my girlfriend in a small town in upstate New York. It was a cold, crisp night, the kind where the air is so still you can hear the distant hoot of an owl. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the quiet neighborhood. My girlfriend Sarah and I were house-sitting for my mom when the strange events began. We were relaxing on the couch, the only sound the crackling of the fireplace and the soft ticking of the clock. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a chilling sound. Heavy footsteps approaching the house. We looked out the window and saw a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. A large, burly man, his face obscured by the dim moonlight, stood there. He was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, and his breath fogged in the cold air. He was carrying a plastic bag, which seemed out of place for the late hour. As we watched in horror, the man began moving quickly in a strange, shuffling way across the street. The crunching of his boots on the frozen ground echoed through the night. He then disappeared into the darkness, leaving us frozen in fear. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "I couldn't believe my eyes," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. The sudden intrusion shattered the peaceful atmosphere of the house. We quickly turned off all the lights and retreated to the laundry room, our hearts pounding in our chests. The only sound was the soft creaking of the floorboards beneath our feet. After what felt like an eternity, I cautiously peeked out the window again. The man was nowhere to be seen. The only sound was the distant howling of a coyote. "I'm scared," Sarah admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Me too," I replied, taking her hand. "We'll be okay." Just as we were beginning to think it was over, we heard a chilling sound, a knock on the door. We rushed over, our hearts pounding in our ears. The doorknob was jiggling, as if someone was trying to force their way in. The sound of the jiggling doorknob was amplified in the silent house, echoing through the hallways. "What do we do?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my voice shaking. "Just stay calm." Luckily, the door was locked. One of my mom's dogs, a small rescue pup named Max, started barking and growling fiercely at the intruder. His loud, screechy bark filled the house, echoing off the walls. The sound was so intense that it seemed like it would shatter the windows. We called my mom to ask for advice, and she told us not to worry. She thought it might have been someone who was drunk or high. The next morning, we decided to tell my mom about the incident. She was shocked and concerned. She told us that this wasn't the first time something strange had happened at her house. She had heard stories of other people seeing strange figures lurking around the neighborhood at night. We decided to do some research online and found some local folklore about a ghostly figure that was said to haunt the area. The stories described a tall, shadowy figure that would appear out of nowhere and disappear just as quickly. "Do you think it could be him?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, my voice filled with doubt. "But it's definitely possible." Could the man we had seen be the ghost? Or was it just a coincidence? We'll never know for sure. But one thing is certain. That night was one of the most terrifying experiences of our lives. I'll never forget the night I met David at Comic-Con. What started as an exciting weekend, surrounded by fellow fans and creators, quickly turned into the most terrifying experience of my life. It was Saturday night, and my friends and I had been having a great time. We were staying in a nice hotel near the convention center, sharing a suite. The energy from the convention was electric. People dressed in their favorite costumes, the latest comic releases being displayed, and everyone seemed to be having the time of their lives. After a day of exploring panels and shopping for rare comics, I decided to head down to the exhibition hall by myself for some quiet time, away from the crowd. That's when I first met David. He seemed like any other Comic-Con attendee, wearing a worn Batman t-shirt and a lanyard full of convention badges. He had a friendly face, maybe in his mid-20s, and approached me with a huge smile, eager to talk about the latest superhero series. I didn't think much of it at first. We chatted casually for a while, discussing comics and upcoming movie releases. He asked me about my favorite characters, my favorite booths at the convention, but I kept things light, not giving away much personal information. I didn't even tell him my real name. When our conversation drifted toward his fascination with darker, horror-based comics, I started to feel a little uneasy. There was something in the way he talked about the violence in those comics, the excitement in his voice when he described the villains, that made me uncomfortable. But I brushed it off. After all, it was Comic-Con, and people liked all kinds of genres. Later that evening, back in the hotel suite with my friends, I felt relieved. We laughed, drank a bit, and shared stories of our favorite moments from the day. I had almost forgotten about David. That's when the knock on the door came. It was David. I was surprised, and my heart raced a little. How had he found my room? I had never told him where I was staying. He must have seen me earlier when I came back from the exhibition hall. He smiled as though nothing was wrong, asking if I wanted to go for a walk. I should have said no. Every part of me told me to decline, but maybe it was the drinks. Maybe it was the fact that we were at a convention full of people. But I agreed. As we walked through the hotel corridors, I immediately sensed something was off. The hallway was quieter than usual, eerily quiet. The buzz of excitement from the convention felt miles away. David's behavior had shifted too. He wasn't the cheerful fan I had met earlier. His demeanor was darker, his tone more serious. He started talking about one of his favorite comic books again, but this time, it was a disturbing, horror-themed story. He described it in vivid detail, focusing on the violent scenes, how the killer in the comic would stalk his victims, how their fear would grow as they realized they couldn't escape. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Then, David shifted the conversation to true crime. He talked about real-life murders with an almost obsessive interest, describing how some killers were never caught, how they blended into everyday life. My discomfort grew into fear. I realized how isolated we were. The hallways were empty. The hotel staff had long since retired for the night. I mumbled something about needing to head back to my room, but David didn't seem to hear me. He had this intense look in his eyes now, as if he was enjoying my unease. That's when things escalated. Without warning, he grabbed my arm. At first, I froze, unsure of what was happening. His grip tightened, and he started pulling me toward the staff elevator at the end of the hallway. I panicked, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. I tried to pull away, but his grip was strong, too strong. He kept his eyes on me the whole time, his expression unreadable. Fear coursed through my veins as I struggled to break free. I called out, my voice shaky at first, but then louder, screaming for help. David's calm exterior cracked for a second, a flash of frustration crossing his face as he tightened his hold, dragging me closer to the elevator. I kicked at him, adrenaline giving me the strength I didn't know I had. My mind raced with thoughts of how this could end, How had I ended up in this situation? This was supposed to be a safe space, a celebration of fandom and creativity, not a place where nightmares came true. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I heard voices, laughter echoing from the other end of the hall. A group of girls dressed in cosplay were coming around the corner. They spotted us instantly, and I screamed again, louder this time. They rushed over, their cheerful faces shifting to concern. David let go of my arm, his expression quickly changing to one of nonchalance, as if nothing had happened. Without saying a word, he disappeared down the hallway, slipping into the shadows of the convention. The girls surrounded me, asking what had happened. I could barely get the words out. My hands were shaking, and I felt like I was going to be sick. They stayed with me, comforting me, as I told them everything. One of them immediately called hotel security, and I reported the incident. David was nowhere to be found by the time they arrived. They searched the hotel, but he had vanished. I was left shaken, my mind replaying the entire ordeal over and over again. That night taught me a powerful lesson. Trust your instincts. No matter how safe a place might seem, danger can always be lurking in the shadows, disguised as a friendly face. Growing up in an old, spooky house was always a scary adventure. Sometimes, those adventures could turn into nightmares. I was the youngest of 3, and I had the scary job of sleeping in the basement. It was a cold, dark place, but my parents said it was good for my health. As a kid, I didn't mind. It felt like my own secret hideout. I'd spend hours down there, playing with my toys, reading comics, and imagining all sorts of scary things. But as I got older, something strange began to happen. I started waking up in the middle of the night, feeling all sweaty and scared. I'd hear weird noises coming from the dark parts of the basement, creaking floorboards, scary whispers, and cold drafts. One night, I decided to be brave and check it out. I grabbed a flashlight and crept down the narrow, winding staircase. The basement was pitch black, except for a little bit of light coming from the cellar door. As I got closer to the cellar, I heard a faint scratching sound. I shined my flashlight into the darkness, and my heart nearly stopped. There, hiding in the corner, was a scary, skinny man. His eyes were wide with fear, and his ragged clothes were dirty and torn. I screamed and ran back upstairs, my legs shaking with fear. I burst into my parents' room, babbling about the monster in the basement. My parents, at first, didn't believe me, but they quickly realized something was wrong. They called the police, and when they arrived, they found the scary man hiding in the cellar. It turned out to be a homeless man who had somehow managed to get into the house through a broken window. He had been living in the basement for weeks without anyone knowing. The incident scared me a lot, but it also made me appreciate the safety of my home. From then on, I always locked the doors and windows, and I never ventured into the basement alone at night.